We're going to mix it up a little bit today and do another Transformers 2-up. 2 bots enter, 1 bot leaves. We're going to look at them in a bunch of different criterium and see who comes out on top. Whoop whoop! Also loving the little Beast Wars Eye Easter egg, and if you look, the slit in the pupil is the arc crashing down. Diggity, diggity, dopeness. Yeah, that's right, we're getting into it today. We're going to do another Transformers 2-up. I chose to do these two figures because they're both, you know, the first ladies of their respective factions, even if Blackarachnia does eventually make the jump. So the original Blackarachnia figure is actually just a repainted Tarantula, so it's not the best one. The original Airrazor figure was actually the first figure intended to be female from the beginning rather than becoming female in the fiction. So that's pretty nifty. So being the 90s, it was still that sort of team dynamic where, you know, you have your strong dude, your smart dude, your funny dude, your badass dude, and then the girl. So, you know, they are the respective 90s style, hey look, there's a girl on the team. Maybe some girls will watch this show. Not in the typical way that you'd think. Both of them got really, really full story arcs and were really well-rounded, fleshed out characters. Were largely non-gendered, which was pretty progressive for how old the show is. I think this is also a good pairing because they're both quite thin figures that have a fair amount of kibble, screen accurate kibble mind you. The kibble corresponds! 1 point each. So without further ado, let's see which figure comes out on top. The first category is Sculpt. So let's go ahead and have a look at Airrazor. So admittedly in the show, the kind of falcon head breastplate does take up the entirety of her chest. But then with these orange pieces here, that does make it a little bit more like the original toy was. So that's pretty cool. We've got that sort of customary, awesome textured finish that you get with Kingdom figures, with all of those feathers through there. That head sculpt is to die for. She looks just as weird as she did in the cartoon. You know what I mean? Looking a little bit like if you mixed Blue Falcon with a grey alien. The wings, for how big they can get, they tuck away and store very nicely and tidily. And given that it's show corresponding kibble, you really don't mind at all. I like it. Then you come down, there's lots of like kind of aerodynamic robot-y parts. These sort of metal bands we see in the original sort of show model. The legs are a good match as well, even as shins. What I like about the Kingdom figures in general is they've been, particularly the Beast Wars ones, all about robot mode first, which is nice. This sculpt really is just something else. Like, she honestly looks like she stepped right off the screen. I feel like this is a comparable likeness and like end result to her Masterpiece version, to be honest. I mean, admittedly, the way the abdomen folds up on her back does hurt the silhouette a little bit, but I find it's not one of those figures where it sort of ruins the whole look for you. And they've just absolutely nailed that head sculpt, in my opinion. Almost every pose that you put her in, it just screams out that kind of Blackarachnia take no prisoners sass. You know how every now and then a figure comes along and it just nails it so thoroughly that you're not just like, yeah, this is a good Blackarachnia. You're kind of like, nah, this is the Blackarachnia. All in all, this would have to be one of my favorite Kingdom figures, legitimately. So when it comes to who has the better sculpt out of the two, I gotta give the point to Blackarachnia because this likeness just embodies everything that the character was about, in my opinion. I mean, come on, was there ever any doubt on this one? Now, when it comes to the Deco, they kind of have a fairly different approach to it. If we start with Blackarachnia, given that as a toy, as a figure, she is all about that TV show accuracy. Like everything about her. It's just a little disappointing that we don't get that third color copper carried through more. See, the copper of the gun, that should be separating like some color difference in the shoulders and the wrist. We should also have it on the legs as well, and potentially on the spider legs. I don't at all mind the spider legs being black. I think that kind of makes sense and helps them and it helps them recede into the background a little bit more, which I think is what you more or less want. But I do think she suffers from not having more of that copper paint carried through, especially in direct comparison to Airrazor. When you look at things like, you know, the different colors involved in the falcon's head, if you come around on her wings, you can get a sense that you got the airbrush finish to create some more visual difference between the different types of feathers. On the back as well, as it comes up to that falcon head, you also get some darker dry brushing over some of the feathers. So that also breaks up that grey brown quite a bit, that sort of clay color. That hit of green in the eyes and even the little sort of tribal markings on her chin go a long way to making this feel like a really fleshed out figure. It would have been really nice just to get that gold on like this little plastic piece that follows under her eye. That would have made her even more show accurate. When you've got all the different grays, the gold, the yellow, the orange, just the complexity of the color scheme I think adds to showing off the mold. When you look at just sort of, you know, the more or less two-tone of Blackarachnia, she does kind of recede a little bit and just read a little bit flat for my taste. I really wish that copper had carried through. So when it comes to the Deco, point to Airrazor. Articulation is a tough category because both of these figures can throw some pretty amazing shapes. So to settle this one, I think we're going to have to get into the nitty-gritty of it. Let's start with Blackarachnia. So her head is on a great bowl joint, and then she has a separate neck piece which is levered as well, so you can really get some very dramatic head motions and movements out of Blackarachnia. Shoulders are on this really nice round universal joint, so you can get as much as you need to out of that. She has a bicep and kind of wrist swivel that's, you know, more to do with the legs than anything else, but it's a great range of motion. She has about a 90-degree at the elbow. No hand. It would have been nice if this was a pinching claw, but it is sculpted to have a really nice snug 5mm port, so she can hold pretty much anything you need it to. Yeah, kitty, kitty, kitty. As you move down, unfortunately, it really seems like it should be, but because of the transformation, you don't quite get it, but there is no waist swivel. Damn shame. We get this sculpted universal joint at the hips, which is cool because that helps, you know, get that more screen accurate, rounded thigh shape that you need. There is a very tight swivel at the top of that thigh. You get almost 180 out of that knee. That's a really, really versatile knee. And then a great ankle rocker with a generous amount of forward. Not a lot of back. Worth noting as well that her waist piece, like this faux spider face, which is, you know, sick, it does limit your forward movement on the legs a little bit. So as soon as you sort of start to get to that point, it does go wide. And when there's no waist swivel, that just means you're left with nothing but crazy sideways kicks. Their articulation is pretty close. That's one of the sort of advantages of being a more slender robot, is they often end up with a much greater range of articulation, and sometimes because they need to pack away a little bit more to form their alt mode, you end up with some extra articulation just by way of them needing it for the transformation. She has just a single ball joint for her neck, but because of her sculpt, you can get a lot of up and stuff, so you can end up with some cool like flying battle poses. What's that over there? Arms, because of the sort of universally joint that they're on, can do 180. You only sort of get about this much upward movement out of the shoulder because of that shoulder piece, but you know, you can then just give it an old twist if you really wanted. These pieces do move somewhat independently as well, so that is pretty cool. It doesn't hurt your lines that much. Good old classic Wolverine shoulder pad. She has a bicep swivel and about a 90-degree out of the elbow. As part of the transformation, you do also have this extra bend at the wrist, which I think actually works as a pretty good just regular wristband and adds a little bit more dynamic motion to some of your poses and stuff. She has a completely unencumbered waist swivel, which is fantastic when it comes to posing. Her hip joints, these universal joints, are a lot more free and clear. She has a mushroom joint at the lower thigh, so you get a thigh swivel just above that knee, and then presumably due to transformation, over 90-degree bend to that knee as well. Her feet aren't quite as posable as Blackarachnia's are. They're just on a little ball joint, but you do still get a reasonable amount of wiggle room out of those feet. So whilst these are two phenomenally articulated figures, I do think the point is going to have to go to Airrazor, because like Shakira says, hips don't lie. Having that waist swivel and that little bit more forward clearance with the hip joints just allows for a deeper, more dynamic range of posing and articulation. That's not to say that Blackarachnia is not still dope, but advantage Airrazor. Whew! When it comes to the transformation itself, Blackarachnia has some very small, thin, fiddly hinging pieces, and if you're not careful, I can imagine those breaking off. Airrazor's transformation is a little bit fiddly as well, but there's not as much of it going on. Most of the effort there goes into just trying to collapse and shrink her in on herself. So it's a simpler transformation than Blackarachnia, but not quite as satisfying. When you get to the end of Airrazor's transformation, you kind of just feel like there should be a little bit more of it than what you're actually seeing. So when it comes to who has the better transformation, I think the point goes to Blackarachnia. Airrazor's beast mode looks fantastic from certain angles. Chiefly this angle right here. As soon as you bring it front on, you're seeing quite a lot of robotness. The orange that I quite liked before in robot mode, because it sort of was a nod to the actual toy, now seems even more like it should probably be the feathered color, just to help it all blend in a little bit more. If you come to the underside, there's nothing here trying to hide the fact that we've got a crumpled robot. Same as from the side and the back. That is about as good a transformation as your average person could get if they were pretending to be a bird with wings on their back. Whereas Blackarachnia's beast mode, whilst it is still pretty kibbly and like, you know, you see a lot of hands and feet there and she's essentially kind of curled up into a ball, because of the size of this abdomen, they've actually been able to hide more of the robot mode than you sort of could with Airrazor. And I also feel like this, with its like long spindly spider legs and the amount of articulation you get from it, is just a more satisfying alt mode. So when it comes to beast modes, Blackarachnia for the win. When it comes to repurposing the mold, I could see how maybe they'll use similar engineering to get Tarantulas, but I think they'll have to more or less use all new parts for him. Except for maybe the arms, I don't know. Time will tell on that one. The only other thing I could see them potentially doing with this mold, which I think would be really cool, is drop a Transformers animated version in that kind of color scheme with a slight remold in parts. That would be awesome sauce. When you think about repurposing the Airrazor mold, we already know that we're apparently getting like a Magnaboss style Prowl coming out in some kind of 2-pack with someone. I can't quite remember who that was. I guess that's kind of cool, but what I can see potentially coming out of it is it's not too hard to imagine how you could very easily get Pterosaur out of this mold. And given the recent leaks we had about the potential of a Pterosaur coming out, if you just flip the beast mode around so that the tail end of the Pterosaur fell there, and you folded up his Pterosaur head on the back, all you'd really have to do is redo the wings. You could use all the same engineering, and you've got yourself a fairly dope Pterosaur out of it. So, because of how much I would love a new Pterosaur figure, mold reuse point has to go to Airrazor. So that is Airrazor and Blackarachnia in a nutshell. With that coming to a close, the tally brings us dead even. In fact, let's go ahead and give them an extra point each for being a couple of super badass mold-breaking female bot characters. I like to think without the advent of these two on screen, we wouldn't have Hunger Games and we wouldn't have on-screen Black Widow quite the way she is. Alright, maybe that's a stretch, but these two figures are friggin' awesome. While they have balanced out to be, you know, a tie, I personally, if I could only get one, I think I would go Blackarachnia, just because in the original cartoon that character was one of my favorites, female or not, just one of my favorite characters in Beast Wars. She was such a badass. Blackarachnia don't give a what? Despite that, they are both incredible figures, and I would highly recommend anyone out there go and pick up the pair of them, because these are really great updates to a couple of classic, awesome characters. So make sure you let me know in the comments below, how do you think they went? How would you have scored this smackdown any differently? And if you want to see more 2-ups, reviews, toy hunts, and what have yous, be sure to like and subscribe, and see you on the next one. Choo choo.